reading this morning is entitled Ministry by Robert Carnan. What makes my experience of ministry so hopeful for me is that I'm not alone in this careful hearing of both pain and excitement. This is not something reserved only to the ordained in the road. It is something we do for and with one another. Ours is a shared ministry of giving and receiving. We tell one another our stories, our myths, our innermost thoughts, and we seek to listen, if we can, with sensitivity and purpose and love. We live lives. We do not live creeds or theologies or even values. We are engaged with real events and real people, and we are related, torn, and isolated together. We are at odds, and we are sometimes very close. The spiritual center of our lives is not to be found in beliefs, no matter how cherished or revered. It comes, rather, out of the openness and honest engagement, the courage and pain, and the love we experience for one another. Sometimes that openness is searching and doubting, confused or serene, ambivalent or empowered, but it is an openness nonetheless. And out of it comes a vision of a world made new by the reality of our lives, lived in the service of love and justice, of gentle goodness and forgiveness. All of us in this, our shared ministry, seek to live into the struggle of each and every one of us as we seek to come to an understanding of who we are, where we are, and how we are. Our ordained minister seeks to help us raise up a vision of where we must go as a people, and invites us, if we need, the invitation to join hands and hearts with one another to get there. Once upon a time, a young kid was coming down the street with a wagon full of puppies. He passed by a Catholic church. Just then a couple of nuns came out, and they were fawning over the boy and his adorable cargo, and they said, "What kind of puppies are they?" "They're Catholic." The nuns beamed. They were instantly impressed by the boy. They thought his cute little puppies were irresistible. And then a few weeks later, the same kid was going down the same street with the same puppies in his wagon. He passed the church again, and the same two nuns saw him coming. They ran to the priest. They said, "Oh, Father, go out and ask that boy what religion his puppies are. It's too cute." So the priest went up to the boy, and in a stern voice, barely covering his amusement, he asked what religion the puppies were. "They're Unitarians," the boy smiled. "What?" The priest was shocked. "Yeah," said the boy, "they're Unitarians. They've opened their eyes." There are at least two problems with this story. First of all, it's a little anti-Catholic. We are a religious tradition in which respect for each person's search for truth and meaning is one of our 7 principles. So, mocking other religions, although popular among us and somewhat characteristic, is actually a weakness. And it's also just a tiny bit arrogant. We Unitarian Universalists aren't at our best when we mock and boast, when we deny that those who follow other religious traditions also have a right to their own search for truth and meaning. Of course, this kind of self-mocking is part of how we distinguish ourselves and our traditions and practices from other paths. We like to think of ourselves sometimes as the church that can laugh at itself, and so a little self-mocking is occasionally in order. For example, there's the story of someone in a UU discussion group who said, "Yeah, we have a problem with thinking we're better than everybody. If only we could get rid of our arrogance, we'd be perfect." The story may be apocryphal, but it does have a slight ring of truth about it. Unitarian Universalists are intellectually curious, and sermons are famously wide-ranging and taking on a broad diversity of topics, but once in a while it's helpful to reflect on ourselves, on who we are as Unitarian Universalists, and what we share and what we do together. We can be proud of our intellectual accomplishments as a denomination. We've long believed, at least on the Unitarian side, in having well-educated ministers. And here in New England, although strangely not so common in other places, ministers typically wear robes, which are a symbol of our academic training. As a religious tradition, we are famously tolerant. Anecdotes about puppies opening their eyes to the contrary notwithstanding. The very earliest appearance of Unitarianism in Transylvania in the 1500s illustrates the point. During the Protestant Revolution, which had started, 1520, give or take, religious doctrinal debates began to spring up, and they became major life and death events. In the Kingdom of Transylvania, in 1568, the king, John Sigismund, convened a debate between Catholics, Lutherans, Calvinists, and Unitarians. And he said that the people of the kingdom would follow whatever religion was advocated by the person who won the debate. The Unitarian bishop, Francis David, and the Calvinist bishop, Peter Melius, were preparing to address the question of the Trinity with the king in attendance, and naturally each of them was quite concerned about the outcome. Melius, Calvinist, was in little doubt that he would triumph. He had truth on his side. And he said, if I win this debate, you will be executed. David responded, if I win this debate, you and everyone else in this country will be given complete religious freedom and the tolerance due to every child of man. Fortunately, David won the debate, and King Sigismund, the only Unitarian king in history, by the way, declared an edict of toleration that allowed everyone to worship according to their own conscience, including not only the various Christian sects, but Muslims as well. If such a policy had been adopted all across Europe during those years, the bloody religious disputes of the 100 Years' War, among others, might have been moderated somewhat, and the enormous loss of property and life might have been lessened. Unitarianism in Transylvania survived centuries of persecution by less tolerant religious traditions and the communist regime of Romania. We Unitarian Universalists here in the United States were largely unaware of that part of our history, but after the fall of communism in 1989 in Romania, we began to form partnerships between our congregations and those of Transylvania. The Bridgewater congregation, for example, is partnered with the Haranglav congregation there, and 12 members of the congregation took a pilgrimage about 10 years ago. And you may have noticed an item in the email blast this week that this congregation has been invited by Jim Robinson, formerly of your parent church, to consider becoming a partner church with Chatham in England, which is something I think you might want to think about as well. And of course, it's not only our clergy who are educated. We Unitarian Universalists are among the best educated religious traditions in the United States. And one of my friends from Bridgewater was telling me that our kids score highest on the SAT. Our members are typically smart. And we have more than our share of teachers, librarians, professors, and eggheads. That also means, especially on the Unitarian side of our tradition, we can be a little too heady, too intellectual, and on occasion, too ready to argue. One mag has it that a Unitarian Universalist approaches every subject with an open mouth. And another suggests that we are Quakers who like to talk too much. But our tendency to argue illustrates one of our great virtues as well, our respect for each person's search for truth and meaning. That's one of the reasons we are a creedless religious tradition. We could never agree on a creed that we could all, in conscience, support. We like to make sure that we agree with anything we say or sing together, which is why it is said that Unitarian Universalist congregations are notably abysmal in singing our hymns. We have to read ahead to make sure we agree with the words, which is one of the reasons that I like to include simpler songs like Come and Go With You to This Land, so we don't have to think so much about it, and we can join together in singing joyfully. Much of our intellectual stuffiness is from our Unitarian side of the tradition. And when the Unitarians and the Universalists merged in 1961 to create our Unitarian Universalist Association, the Universalist side of the marriage added some new depth in spirit to our traditions. And so we can sing Every Time I Feel the Spirit, or Spirit of Life, and acknowledge that there's something more than can be reduced to words and ideas and science. Unitarianism insisted on the importance of reason in religion, rejecting on those grounds the Trinity, which they regarded as irrational, while Universalism's distinctive doctrine, as we told the children this morning, was the insistence that no one will be condemned to eternal damnation, that everyone will be saved, that God is love. This compassion for everyone was characterized by the great atheist Robert Ingersoll as a religion where they believe in a God who leaves the latchstring out until the last child comes home. Thomas Starr King served both Unitarian and Universalist churches in the course of his career, and he served last in San Francisco, where Abraham Lincoln credited him with having helped keep California in the Union at the start of the Civil War, preaching up and down for unity and against slavery. He summarized the difference between our two traditions by saying that Unitarians believe that they are too good for God to condemn them to hell, while Universalists believe that God is too good to condemn anyone to hell. And Ambrose Bierce, in his Devil's Dictionary, offered these definitions of our two traditions. Unitarian, one who denies the divinity of a Trinitarian. Universalist, one who forgoes the advantages of a hell for persons of another faith. William Sinkford, past president of the UUA, summarized our two traditions in his credo: one God, no one left behind. Together we're stronger. Together our combined religious traditions call us to respect both head and heart, to listen to reason, but also to listen to the Spirit, whose expansiveness can never be captured in words, no matter how sophisticated. Our unity is expressed in the 7 principles that we shared this morning in our responsive reading, using both our formal and our informal versions. In summary, we affirm and promote a commitment to the dignity of every person everywhere and to the web of life of which we are all a part, to justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, and to a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, to the acceptance of one another and encouragement to one another's spiritual growth while respecting the right of conscience and the democratic process. We Unitarian Universalists call on everyone to embark on a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, or as the Chatham Meeting House affirmation puts it, to dwell together in peace and to seek the truth in love. We often disagree with one another, and we're not afraid to say so. A Unitarian Universalist approaches everything with an open mouth. As our opening words this morning put it, we're not all of one mind, and when we bring our visions together for the future, we don't all speak the same language to name what is holy. Different teachers and words of Scripture speak our heart's truth, and yet we gather ourselves in worship together. And in gathering, we name and honor our differences by which we are made rich and complex and lovely. We're proud of our Unitarian and Universalist history. We can name some of the heroes in our American history. We have an RE curriculum that is called UU Superheroes. We look back with admiration to William Ellery Channing, the first of our ministers to claim the name Unitarian in 1819, to Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Margaret Fuller, and the other transcendentalists who helped to invite spirit back into Unitarianism, a Unitarianism that had become corpse cold, as Emerson put it. to John and John Quincy Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and William Howard Taft, among those who served as our presidents, and to Martin Luther King Jr., who attended but did not join one of our Boston congregations while earning his doctorate at BU. He and Coretta King preferred our more rational approach to religion, but concluded, as Coretta put it, that they would need to remain in their Baptist tradition if they wanted to lead a movement fighting for the freedom and equality of African Americans. And in the course of that struggle, we Unitarian Universalists have several martyrs, James Reed and Yola Liuza, both murdered during the period of the Selma protests for voting rights. It was a struggle that also drew 1/3 of our Unitarian Universalist clergy in the entirety of the UUA board. Together, we are stronger. Our belief in the democratic process leads us to put the authority here within the local congregation. We claim that no authority outside the congregation can tell us who to call as a minister, what we must believe or what we must do, what actions, if any, we have to take. We believe that real religion requires each of us to work out our own salvation and what we understand by that word, and to find our own words to express our faith so that we can express it with integrity. That's why our coming of age programs ask each of our budding teenagers to come up with a credo that expresses the state of their faith at that moment in their young lives. And we know that all through our lives we have to reformulate, recalibrate, and find different and new words for expressing the faith that we are going into. To make this all work, we also commit to stick together, to rely on one another, to walk together in peace along life's journey, or in the words of the affirmation, to help one another. Together we are stronger. Together we support our Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, which helps us translate our commitments to action in helping others around the world to gain freedom and gain their rights as human beings. The Service Committee also enables us to join together in providing resources when disaster strikes anywhere in the world. And this congregation and many others have given generously when the Service Committee called on us to provide assistance in the face of natural disasters, whether New Orleans or Haiti or most recently the Philippines. As part of our association, we develop religious education curricula. Our hymnals obviously are part of our standing together with other congregations. We join in struggles for civil rights and justice throughout the land. We stand on the side of love together in the face of injustice and persecution, as we did in Selma, as we did in advocating for equal rights and gay rights, equal marriage and gay rights, supporting the rights of undocumented immigrants, as we did at our General Assembly in Phoenix 2 years ago. Many of you will have seen Edmund's check-in in the newsletter, where he talked about joining the Moral Mondays in a large demonstration in North Carolina, where the legislature has passed a series of very repressive laws, and the progressives in the area, led by the NAACP, have been holding weekly sit-ins in protest, and Edmund was able to join them on February 8th in Raleigh, proudly wearing one of our yellow Standing on the Side of Love t-shirts. Together we can foster the growth of our ministry, which is becoming increasingly diverse. We're proud as a denomination to have had more women in ministry sooner than most other denominations. We started encouraging ministries by women in the 1850s, and at this point we are one of the few denominations with more women among our ministers than men. And we're in the process of developing a more diverse ministry as we support ministers of color in our pulpits, and as we prepare for a future America that will be much more diverse than we have been accustomed to, or that is represented in our pews. And of course, both Chatham and Bridgewater are welcoming congregations, which means we've taken on the challenge of examining our own prejudices and failures to see clearly how we are seen by others and how we automatically see other people, where we've fallen short of being welcoming to everyone, gay or straight. We Unitarian Universalists are content to live without a creed, a fixed form of words that has to be affirmed by all of us. We're content to tolerate and honor the beliefs of others, to disagree in love, to speak out and work against injustice and oppression, to give generously to help those in need, and to walk together through thick and thin, joys and sorrows, triumphs and failures. We are Unitarian Universalists. And of course, we will examine critically any particular expression or form of words and belief that we encounter. But it would be difficult for any of us to disagree with David Rankin's expression of his faith, believing from his meditation manual, Dancing in the Empty Spaces. I believe in the holy, lifting, sustaining, among us, within us, around us. I believe in living with a song to sing, in awe, in adoration, out of joy, out of praise. I believe in loving, in intimate communion of gentle compassion and the giving of roses. I believe in seeking, daring to explore, doubting without fear, cautious with certainties. I believe in prophecy, the spirit of outrage, clapping like thunder, healing the world. Blessed be.